Alright, hello and welcome to my video on how to do Death Knight tanking. This is going to be the first part in I believe a 3-part series. This time I'm going to talk about glyphs, talents, and also what stats you want basically, how to gear your character kind of. So, if you haven't played since Cataclysm, which a lot of people haven't, talents look a lot different. No more of the 75 points that you used to have. Instead, we've got just 7, which is nice. They also aren't as important as they used to be. So, unlike in the past when it was pretty much there was a quote unquote best spec or best build, not so much anymore. But there are some that are, I would call, mandatory for good tanking. So I'll go over those and just do a quick gloss over the ones that aren't so important. So the first one here is Plague Leech. You definitely want this. This will allow you to take 2 runes that are on cooldown and immediately bring them back as death runes, which is extremely useful. Unholy Blight's not going to be helpful because it's going to just put on the 2 diseases that you could put on with something like Outbreak and Blood Boil. And then you have Plague Bearer, which is not going to help because that just makes the duration longer. So pointless. The only one that's useful here is Plague Leech. Also, on the next talents, next area, you have Lichborn, and Magic Zone, and Purgatory. Lichborn will get you out of Fear, Sleeps, and Charms. Not that useful. Magic Shell, or Magic Zone rather, is situationally useful. Not that useful, honestly. And then Purgatory is the one that's actually really useful. It's a passive that allows you to, if you die, it basically just doesn't let you die for 3 seconds if you would normally die. But you have to be healed within that 3 seconds or you are screwed basically. So that's actually a really useful skill, and I would definitely pick that one. The next group, it really doesn't matter. Chillblains would be probably the last of the 3 that I would pick. Asphyxiate is useful for some dungeons because you'll be able to have a stun, which you normally don't have. Asphyxiate is basically like a stun. This is pretty much it. If you can't stun something, it silences them, which is not as useful, but okay. That's advances what I've chosen, mostly because I like to be able to move quicker. So I just picked that one. It also functions kind of like a sprint, so that's why I picked that one. Blood Tap in the next one is the must-have. So the reason you want that is because these other 2 are basically a 1.5% chance per runic power spent. So let's say you use a Death Coil, it's going to give you about a 31% chance to actually no, it's about 35%, somewhere between 30 and 35% chance to get a rune, brought back to you, which is a 1 in 3, which is, it's a chance. It's not 100%. That this, every time you use 3 Death Coils, you will be able to get a rune back, every single time. So that is significantly better than a chance. This is a definite. You will get these runes back. You will get a rune, and this is you might get a rune. So definitely Blood Tap. Out of these 3, you then have the choice of Death Pact, Death Siphon, or Conversion. Death Pact is really the better option of these 3. If you look at Conversion, it turns your runic power into health up to 6%. That's not a whole lot of health. Then you have Death Siphon, which acts kind of like a Death Strike, but it won't give you the healing absorption or the absorption barrier that you get from Death Strike. So situationally useful maybe. And it does only use 1 death rune, so as you're death striking, you're turning your frost and plague runes into, or rather your frost and unholy runes, you're turning them into death runes, which is useful because then you'd be able to do 4 of these death siphon attacks, which would be kind of nice. Especially since you're getting 335% of the damage dealt. Depending on how much damage you're dealing, that could be a lot of healing. But it's iffy. So what I've chosen is Death Pact because that will give you a guaranteed 50% of your maximum health. If you combine that with Vampiric Blood, that'll give you even more than 50% of your maximum health, because you're getting that extra 10% of healing. Plus, a vampiric blow without the rune or without the glyph rather, will give you a additional 15% maximum health, so you'll get even more health back. So it's kind of like an emergency thing to do, which is really, really nice. Sorry about that. So that's that. Of the next three, none of these really are particularly great. Desecrated Ground is what I've chosen because that will allow you to, drop any snares, roots, and other stuff that cause loss of control of character. Some stuns it also breaks you out of. So it's actually really useful. So I'd pick that one. And then of the last set, Necrotic Plague replaces Blood Plague and Frost Fever, which doesn't really do much for you. It's more of a DPS or PvP thing. Breath of Sindragosa, you'll get 10% of your spell damage that's been dealt to you healed. That would be really useful if you were fighting a large number of casting enemies, but it's very rare. So instead I've chosen Defile because that gives you a 10% mitigation, which is, significantly better. And that pretty much does it for the talents. Next up you have the Glyphs. So your minor Glyphs, really none of them stand out, so, doesn't really matter what you pick for those. I chose Path of Frost so that I can fall from higher distances, which is common, and not take as much damage or any damage sometimes. And I've also chosen Horn of Winter just because I like the effect, and I've got Corpse Explosion so I can blow up corpses. That's pretty much it. Now for my major glyphs, what I've chosen is Outbreak. This is one that you definitely want. And the reason for that is normally Outbreak is it's a couple minutes, I think it's 2 or 3 minute cooldown, and that kind of sucks because what you can do instead is use this glyph to make it cost runic power, and you can use whatever you want. So what you'll do during your rotation is you'll use the Plague Leech talent to pull your 2 diseases off, and then you'll use the Death Strike, or you'll Death Strike with the 2 runes that you got, and then, or use whatever you want to use, typically Death Strike. But you'll Death Strike with those 2, and then you'll be able to get your runic power back and use Outbreak, which will give you 2 runes of your blood charge, or 2 blood charges for your rune tap, or correction, blood tap. These names are throwing me off, but yeah, you'll be able to use your blood tap. So that's actually really useful. I've also chosen Anti-Magic Shell because Anti-Magic Shell will give you 100% of the absorption instead of like 50% or 70%, whichever one it was. Typically, if I'm using Anti-Magic Shell, I'm going to use it to block a specific spell, or I'm trying to get out of the area of taking damage. So to have this absorb all the damage as opposed to part of the damage is significantly better. I've also chosen Icy Touch just as a way to dispel effects and buffs from enemies. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. There's not really anything particularly great else that you can pick. I wouldn't pick Vampiric Blood because, like I was talking about earlier, your Death Pact will give you 50% of your maximum health back. So if you have more maximum health, then you get more healing done. So I would leave it as is because more maximum health gives you a higher Death Pact. Usually I use these 2 in combination. And then your Icebound of Fortitude, it could be useful to bring to reduce the cooldown because it's normally 3 minutes. To bring it down to a 1.5 minute cooldown would be kind of nice, but it only lasts, currently it lasts 80 seconds or 8 seconds. So to bring it down by 3/4 of that, it's going to make it about a 2-second long skill. So I wouldn't, it's not really worth it. If you really need threat, if you have problems with threat, you can pick the Glyph of Dancing Ring Weapon, but I also wouldn't pick that. One I would choose, honestly, Blood Boil is helpful for picking up a lot of ads, but at the same time it's makes you a bit more likely to pick up stuff that you didn't intend to pick up. So couple options there, just kind of got to pick what you want. But definitely Glyph of Outbreak and Anti-Magic Shell are very useful. So that pretty much does talents and glyphs. Now I'm going to be the first one to admit I'm still gearing up a little bit. The expansion just came out, so still improving my gear and getting ready. Over time this will change, so whatever. For now though, doing a really good job of tanking. I'm having really no problems with anything. But what you're gonna want as far as stats go, from all the theory crafting and everything that I've read and what I've personally experimented with, what you really want are mastery and strength. And the reason for that is strength is going to give you more attack power, and that's what all of your attacks are based upon. It also is what your healing from your death strike is based upon. So having more strength is definitely a huge boost. The other thing is mastery. Mastery is going to also going to increase your attack power, but it's going to also give you more of an absorption shield. So if you have 50% of mastery, you'll get 50% of the amount you heal will come back as an absorption shield. If you had 100%, you get 100% of that damage that you healed as an absorption shield. So typically, if I use blood boil maybe 3 times, I'll heal up to about 37,000 HP. So 37,000 HP plus 37,000. I mean, you're basically doubling. You're almost kind of doubling your healing in a way from that absorption shield. Now it is only for physical damage, so it's kind of iffy, but you do have your animagic shell for otherwise. So definitely mastery and strength are really, really good. Obviously haste isn't bad either, because haste is going to let you increase your attack speed and, more importantly, your rune regeneration. The more runes you have, the better you do. I mean, if you could just spam death strike just without stop, you'd probably be better off altogether, honestly. But the other thing is bonus armor. Straight bonus or straight armor, for straight damage mitigation is great. And then of course a little bit of multi-strike. So multi-strike's kind of good. If you have a lot of multi-strike, you can, I'm not sure 100% yet if that affects your death strike heals or not. If it does, that's really good. But I can't really say a whole lot. Versatility isn't bad, and avoidance obviously is good too, but you don't really worry about leech, because leech is pretty much useless. I mean, you're not going to be getting much back as far as from your regular attacks. You're going to be getting more health back from your death strikes, so don't worry so much about leech. And that's pretty much it. So the next one we'll be going over the rotation. I've got some annotations most likely on the videos, so if you want to click on those to go to the next ones, that would be great. Appreciate you watching this one. Like, subscribe if you found this helpful, or if you just want to help me out so I can make more of these. And that's all.